Well, hello there. This is Shane from Shane's Books and Review. You made it to Friday. Congratulations. I'm glad to see that you're back. Today's book is going to be Verses for the Dead, wrote by Douglas Preston and Lincoln Child. Now, the Pendergast story. Let me get myself comfy here. Where to even begin? Okay, so there's a new character, and like I said on Monday, for a change, the character introduction for the first one in a series isn't feeling so weak. We have a new person by the name of Cold Moon. And I wasn't sure the first time that I read it if I liked Cold Moon. But the second time that I read it, I found that I did. And it has to do with my own personal issues of letting go of other characters in a book series and adopting new ones, right? Because I do like D'Agosta. I'm not sure if I like D'Agosta more than I like Pendergast, but D'Agosta is kind of like my kind of guy. He's succinct, he's honest, he's earnest. He believes in getting the right thing done and doing his best to get the best outcome. He also understands structure and how things should work, even if he has the moral obligation of Pendergast riding on his back, screwing with his morality from time to time. Now, so Cold Moon. Cold Moon is a very interesting character choice. Complements Pendergast in a lot of ways, and he's a lot different of a character than what D'Agosta is for sure. In this story, the two of them work together, start to work together better, and by the end of it are much like partners. But from the get-go, I didn't know how to take Cold Moon. I don't know if it's a bit of his backstory that's given or what, but I was just, the candor and the dialogue from Cold Moon's character was actually quite phenomenally done. It was completely different than a lot of the dialogue that I've ever heard in their books in the past. Not that it was broken English or anything like that, just the cadence, the rhythm, and the way that I interpreted that as I read it. It was different and unique for me. Pendergast is, of course, Pendergast. And in the opening scene, he's already breaking rules, showing up early and trying to get to look at this investigation and find out what's going on. He ends up getting paired up with this Cold Moon. Of course, Cold Moon has been instructed from the get-go to pretty much spy on Pendergast and just kind of keep him in check. Maybe he'll go away. Pendergast is a very tenacious individual and doesn't like leaving things not taken care of. But he also has that Sherlock kind of a mentality of justice served in whichever way is justice served. There are plenty of examples of that in previous books of where he would let one person go even though they were guilty of other things. And his use of the carrot and stick method. Pendergast is typical Pendergast in this book. He sticks to himself. The voice for him hasn't changed very much at all. And there is a bit of a mention of his household and Constance. The Constance story, I don't know how you guys and gals feel about it, but I wish that they would either do something with it or let it go. If they're going to be romantic, let's make them romantic. If they're just going to be surrogate father and adopted daughter that's really older than he is in a lot of ways, then let's have it like that. But get off the fence post. I appreciate everything that those guys have done in writing the stories. They have provided a lot of entertainment for a lot of people. But it would be nice to either have resolution or that story fulfilled. The story is got a couple little plot twists to it. It really was needed. It wasn't just that they threw some type of weird plot device in there that was convenient. It was actually a well done plot device. Not going to tell you what it was. We have Cold Moon and Pendergast trying to figure out why, after all these years on these people's graves, hearts are starting to show up. There's a killer that's known as the Broken Hearts Killer. It seems like there might be a connection. Pendergast does his thing. They find the connection. The story revolves around Cold Moon and Pendergast chasing down old leads, trying to put everything together and finding out what was actually going on, why that was so very important to this Broken Hearts Killer. Is he like a Sith where he's got somebody that's a master that's teaching him how to do these things, or her how to do these things? A little bit more detail than there usually is in a opening book in a series for them, which was good. I'm not sure if Cold Moon, and with the way that things ended, if he would really want to be in the next novel or not, so this might just be a little standalone. I really don't want to say it. I don't want to see the end of Pendergast, but I'm not sure what all else they could really do with the character besides just come out with another story after another story, which is kind of troublesome to me. Now, if they did decide to close it off, this would be kind of a weak book to have them close that off from, because we've had our fun. And I'm not tired of Pendergast by any means. but they need to have that fresh blood. We have Cold Moon and we have Pendergast, and the two of them, they're constantly under fire from their lead officers in the investigation. It is through Pendergast's tenaciousness that he finds out the little missing points and puts things together. I think that they nailed it in one with a description where they actually brought up Sherlock in this book, which Sherlock has been an influence on them for sure, and admittedly so from the authors themselves. The difference between induction and deduction. And that is a very important distinction, really. Pendergast definitely uses deduction instead of induction and gets to a very particular point, puts all the little dots together, figures out what's going on, how they were actually related from 20 years back on the original things that had happened, and steps on a lot of toes getting there. Now, by the end of the book, there was one thing that happened that I just did not agree with, but I liked it, if that can make sense. And it had to do with the Broken Hearts killer. I see where they were going. I see what they were doing. I see why they did what they did. I'm not exactly sure if, even though Pendergast directly addressed him and all that, that type of an individual would have actually aided a federal agent and then been so very compliant to just be arrested and go along. That was the reason why I didn't like it. Not to be disingenuous here, but I was just like, meh. Isn't necessarily an intellectual god. He is different from most of the stuff that we've seen in Pendergast books before. I don't think that character would have behaved in that way. I really don't. That's me. That's my opinion. So here's where I'm going to pose my first question to you about this is, what do you guys and gals think? Have you read it? I'm sure you'll know what I'm talking about. Do you see that playing out that way? I mean, it was very, M. Night Shyamalan. It was easy. A lot of the times easy is not very realistic. Not in that kind of way. Now, for the core of the story with Cold Moon and with Pendergast, that wasn't an easy relationship to start. There was a lot of posturing between the two of them trying to figure each other out, and I really liked a couple of things in the character about Cold Moon himself. He did things very purposely, and the coffee thing. See, I'm a coffee nut. I love some coffee. Specifically, if I were to get into it, Death Wish Coffee, man, all the way. They have another brand that they make called Valhalla Java. If you've never had it, oh my God, is it phenomenal. Hashtag not sponsored. Not at all. But, hey, beyond me kidding, I do enjoy some good coffee, and Cold Moon liked coffee just a little bit differently. Same thing within one of the beginning scenes whenever they stay at a hotel, and Pendergast sweet talks the guy that owns the place out of his own room when Cold Moon leaves his revolver on Pendergast's bed, but uses the other bed to spread his stuff out. That was an interesting little scene. I was also applauding that scene because it was true. They need to come up with something a little bit more than just Pendergast being a problem solver. And the stories, God, all the stories where there's a little bit of mystic to it, I have enjoyed those more than the cold case type things or the real life type things, especially with like Relic. I mean, Relic was so well done. That whole 3-book series, it was awesome. I highly enjoyed it, and I don't know if it's because the books started out that way that I feel the way that I do, that I like Pendergast dealing with supernatural things that don't actually exist but kind of do, and there's a logical progression and figuring out of why this has happened, and that's why I enjoyed the stories originally versus it just being something so completely realistic and plausible that it could happen. The story almost falling on itself because of it lacking those mystical things. I also think the reason why I originally had an issue the first time that I read it with Cold Moon was that there has been so much of the supernatural type things in the Pendergast novels in the past, or people making things out to be supernatural that aren't and him debunking them. I was afraid that whenever I found out that Cold Moon was a Indian type of a character, that they were going to completely misrepresentate or go away in a way that they shouldn't go, because that's something that I'm fairly sensitive about. And I was afraid of it, and I'm still afraid that that's what they're going to eventually do with that character. It's off-putting in a way. But as far as what I was hoping to see in the story, I'm not exactly sure what I was hoping for, because some authors, whenever they release a book, I'll just grab it because I know their work, I know their canon, and I enjoy them. Would I recommend this Pendergast novel to you? My friends, my fellow booksters, whatever you want to call yourself. It's one of those things where I was really hoping for the next story for Pendergast. And I'm not sure what they're going to do here. I'm not sure how they're going to bring this about. If I were to ask myself the question earnestly, would I recommend this Pendergast novel to somebody that's not read Pendergast before, or to somebody that's a big Pendergast fan? I'm not sure that I could. I was super excited for the book. I really was. I was looking forward to it in so many ways. Is there anything wrong with the story inherently? No, there's not. That in there lays the problem for me, is that it was simply a good story. It got from point A to point B. It didn't leave very many open holes in it. It was a succinct story. It was a honest story, I believe, for the characters that they wrote in it. But I felt like it really wasn't a Pendergast novel in the same tone as the previous Pendergast novels. And that's why I say that I could not honestly recommend getting it. It's not that it was a bad read. It was a decent read. It's not that they didn't have interesting things to say. They did, but it left me feeling blank. And on that somber note, we're going to end the video. So sorry. We'll be back Monday at 3 o'clock p.m. CST. Like, share, subscribe. This is Shane with Shane's Books and Review. I will see you on Monday.